Good morning, everyone. Let's get started. We have a good crowd here in the room to join the conversation, but we also have a lot of people online who will be listening in. So we will be using our mics whenever we have questions so that people online can follow. So thank you, everyone, for joining us today for a conversation on harnessing AI for higher education. I am Frederick Anseal. I'm the Dean of the Business School, just on the building on the other side here. And I've been working closely with the strategy team on developing this new strategy for the university. And of course, we have this whole week of the Strategy Expo to have conversations, to get input, to get feedback, to develop our thinking around where we want to go with the UNSW strategy in the next few years. We had our official launch on Monday, and this is, I think, the third day already, but the first panel. And we will be discussing AI in higher education. Everyone is talking about this. Nobody knows what to do. I'm a dean of a business school. When I go to conferences at the moment of business schools, every business school is all over this. All universities are all over this. We all see this is a hugely important area. It is so quickly evolving. We know that everyone is doing stuff, all disciplines, but also all individuals, but students as well. It's very hard to keep track of what everyone is doing, but we all believe this is the big promise. We're ready for a big jump. We just don't know how to organize it. So what does this mean for UNSW? How can we sort of leverage everything that we do it in a coordinated way and really make a big impact? We have a great panel today. All people that I've had many conversations with in the past weeks, months, and years. And so I'm very happy to be able to introduce those people to you. First of all, we have Professor Marianne Williams from our own business school. Marianne is the Deputy Director of the UNSW AI Institute, but also the founder and the director of the AI Lab in the business school. And she is the Michael Crouch Chair of Innovation in the Business School. Welcome, Marianne, here today. Rushi Vyas is the founder of our multi-award winning startup, What's on Campus. I think most of you probably know Rushi and have had many energizing conversations with him. He's also an innovation and entrepreneurship academic, again in the business school, was previously a UNSW student in the Master of Commerce and is finishing up and I think graduating in 2 months. Exactly, exciting. Then we have Professor Alex Steele, who is the UNSW Director of AI Strategy Education and a professor in the Faculty of Law and Justice. And he has the very challenging task to keep us all together in this AI strategy as we move forward. And then, of course, our panel will be moderated by Vinita, Chanan, our Executive Lead for Strategic Alliances. And I've gotten to know Vinita much better in the past few weeks and months. We are working very closely together on the strategy. She is a member of the UNSW Strategy team. Thank you all for joining us. And can I invite you here to start that conversation?
And welcome to, I think this might be the third talk on in our series around the Strategy Expo. We welcome you to the Strategy Expo. And we're really encouraging you to kind of look at the posters. If you hadn't had a chance already, look at the posters behind you. That's the work Frederick was referring to when we talked about what we've been working on in developing the strategy itself. So we're encouraging you to provide feedback, scan the QR code after the panel event, obviously, and kind of stay and talk to members of the strategy team as we go through this week. Today's discussion, however, is focused on AI, how it's disrupting our sector, some of the challenges and the opportunities for us at UNSW. And in developing the strategy, we've been thinking a lot about AI and other emerging technologies. AI is the flavor of the month or the next 10 years, I'm told. But what's coming? And really, in thinking about the strategy, we're thinking about how do we then future-proof the university? How do we think about how we want to use it? How do we prepare ourselves as we embark on this 10-year strategy and into the future? And we're also hearing that AI is doing a lot of transformational work for industries and sectors that's good, but there's also some caution around how we use it. So those are all the things that we've been talking to our experts and hope to kind of go into some of that here at the panel today. So I'm very pleased again to be joined on the panel by colleagues who are working on these very issues. Professor Alex Steele, Director of AI Strategy in the Division of Education and Student Experience. Professor Marianne Williams, as Frederick said, Michael Kraut Chair for Innovation at the UNSW Business School, and a few other hats, Director of Business AI Lab. And Rushi, Vyas, who, congratulations, you're graduating in a couple of weeks. You're also a casual lecturer, but an app. You've also created the What's on Campus app. We might get straight into the questions, and we'll have time at the end to for you to ask a few questions of our panel. So I might start with Alex. Alex, you're Director of AI Education. Yes, that's a pretty big role in our times. You also chair the AI Leadership Group at UNSW, which is a group that brings together our education portfolio, our research portfolio, operations, and other aspects, looking at what should UNSW be doing? How should we work with AI? Could you tell us a little bit about what UNSW is doing with AI, and what do you see the biggest opportunities being?
In education.
Sure.
Yes, because I think the first thing probably to say is that we're doing huge things. Is the mic on? Can't hear it. Is that better? Yeah, let's use that. So look, I think the first thing to really sort of acknowledge is that we are world leaders in our research around AI, and a lot of the talking, a lot of the thinking about AI actually comes out of the research side of the university. So one of the massive challenges I think we have and opportunities is how do we actually make sure that all of that research that we're engaging in comes across into the education side and comes into the classroom. And that's something that is an organic process, but it's something I think that is already happening a lot and will increase into the future. In terms of what's actually the biggest opportunities, I think, in terms of education, if you think about sort of the life cycle is not the right word, but if you think about the sort of the process of the way in which we teach and learn, there's a huge opportunity for AI to give inspiration and preparation assistance to academics in terms of getting ready to teach, trying to think of new ways to sort of put classes together, to build activities. There's a whole lot of inspirational aspects of AI. And AI almost never gives you the perfect lesson. It never gives you the perfect rubric, but it really gets you over that hump. So there's a lot of cognitive load, I think, that AI can really help us with in terms of our sort of workload in preparing for class. And then in the classroom itself, the way in which our students and ourselves are engaging with the material and the ideas, there's so much that AI can do to speed up the production of really interesting, engaging activities, sort of multimedia activities, things that are interactive. So we can really start to make the learning process incredibly through AI technologies in the classroom. And then outside of the classroom, and Rushi's probably going to talk about this quite a lot, there's a huge amount of assistance that AI can give to students. So just a coach by the side. The big challenge, of course, is to make sure that we are all understanding where the limit of coaching is and where sort of that steps over into sort of inhibiting your learning. So how do we make learning just that little bit hard enough so that it encourages us to keep learning? And then the other thing that I think is really, really significant is the concept of feedback. So one of the things we've struggled with education scale is how do we make sure that we have feedback? And it's not just feedback from staff to students, it's from students back to staff. And so AI, I think, has huge potential to be able to collate all sorts of data and provide information backwards and forwards so that we can really start to build communities of learning rather than just transmission approaches to education. So they're some of the opportunities, and there's a lot more.
Great, thank you. And we'll delve a bit more into that as well. Marianne, when we walked in, we said we could joke that AI made suggestions on what outfits we wear today, but we didn't. Pink is in. So Marianne, you work at the forefront of AI innovation through the research that you're conducting at the business school. Could you tell us what trends you see in the sector at the moment, and then how does UNSW stack up in terms of our knowledge and the implementation of AI?
So I think there's a lot going on, and it's driven by the incredible investment in this technology. It's, we've never seen anything like this. You've got $1 billion technology in your pocket for $30 a month. And the possibilities are really only limited by the sort of innovation that we build and where we see value. That's our challenge. It's got, in a way, nothing to do with AI. And that's why more than 88% of us, 88% of adopters are ordinary people. They're not in tech, they're not in AI. They're in medicine, they're in law, they're everywhere. That's also very kind of extraordinary. And I think, beyond the education opportunities, which I think you did a great summary, and I'm personally really excited about the feedback, because great feedback is timely feedback. Something happened, it was good or bad, and you found it straight away. And that's what you need in, to learn quickly, to iterate quickly. And Sam Altman, who's CEO of OpenAI, said the organizations that are going to win are the ones that can iterate the fastest. And I think this is our biggest challenge as an organization. If we can find the way, and I think we're taking great steps toward that, setting up sandboxes, accelerators. We've also got this extraordinary culture here. And I think our culture, in a way, as well as our capability, is our unfair advantage, because we're an incredibly collaborative university. We can go and knock on any door, really, and find a way to work together or solve a problem. And I think that's quite unique. Mm-hmm. And that's meant that we really got on the front foot. I know in the business school, within days, we ran workshops on ChatGPT. And to get people excited before they all disappeared at Christmas. And I don't know that was happening elsewhere, right? And so because of our orientation toward, change in technology, and also our greater capacity in AI that Alex mentioned, has also set us up to, have a kind of a whole of university approach. And this is also unique. Yes, we've got the point solutions everywhere. People have accused me of having pet projects. But overall, we do have this organizational approach and also strategies. And I think, the first year almost was like, what's going on? Everyone digesting, everyone trying to comprehend, what is this and what does it really mean for us? And during that time, there were so many conversations. Alex led many of them here. And we were just asking questions, which is exactly what you need to do when, you have a kind of a breakthrough game-changing technology, hitting you in the face in the Mike Tyson sense. So I think that UNSW is extraordinarily well-placed, but also we're moving. We've got momentum. Yes, as Frederick said, we don't really know where we're going, but that is, I think, harder for organizations who don't have that collaboration piece, this culture of, learning and working together.
I might just stick with you for a moment, because Alex covered how AI is being used in education. I find some of your research really interesting. Do you want to talk a little bit about how you're using AI in your research?
Yeah, well, I've been working in AI for 30 years, and there's sort of two kind of main areas. There's the agents. I work with AI agents, AI that's autonomous. I mean, if you can get a person out of the loop, sorry, Alex, it's better. Because if you've got a human in the loop system with an AI, that AI's got to manage the human. That's hard. It's got to hand over tasks and accept tasks. Alex said that AI is not perfect yet. Well, I mean, you didn't say yet. AI is not perfect. And initially I thought, yeah. But then I thought, you know what? People are the weakest link there. You can't blame AI if it didn't give you what you wanted because you didn't ask it with a great prompt or give it the information and context that it needed to give you the perfect solution. And that's an area, the human collaboration. And I think that's really the future. And the biggest, or not the biggest, but one of the really big challenges is how do we ensure that AI decisions, behaviours, align with our preferences and expectations.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a little story. A friend of mine got trapped in a Waymo in San Francisco a couple of months ago. Waymo is a driverless taxi. They jumped in. They only needed to go 10 minutes. They were sort of jumping in because it was a bit of fun. There was a Waymo there, and away they went. But then the Waymo took them on a 45-minute scenic route because it was, as it tends to do in San Francisco, it was rainy. Well, it wasn't foggy, but it was rainy. And where they were a lot of one-way streets and things, and also, these sort of electric buses. Anyway, the Waymo plotted a course that was sort of avoiding all the obstacles that it couldn't handle in those conditions. And they were trapped in the car. And all they could do was ring Waymo. Has anyone ever tried to call Google or Facebook to fix a problem right now? That was all they had. And they didn't really know what was going on. They had to sort of piece it together. And at the end of the day, they don't really know now. Maybe it was just a bug. Humans want to give that a real explanation. Of course, Waymo knew where it was going and it was avoiding the one-way streets and stuff. So aligning with our interests, humans' interests, we need to know what our preferences are and what we expect the AI to do. And in teaching and learning, that's a big responsibility because we have a duty of care. And when we're using these technologies that maybe we don't even understand, it really raises deep questions about what we're doing and how we're doing it. And these are great research questions, which is why I focus on that.
Excellent, thank you. And we might dig a little bit into that around the ethics and the guardrails a bit later. Rushi, I'll turn to you now, and I did say to you, I want you to give your plug for your app. So tell us about your What's On Campus app, and then I'll ask you the question.
So I am an international student, and I came to UNSW in 2022, September, 25 months ago. And there were a lot of things related to, we did not have a first year festival with free Messina. If you're interested, free Messina. But then the problem that I faced was, how do I connect? And it's a new country, not just housing or finding courses or enrollment, it's also friends. And I think that's what led to me thinking, how do I know what's happening around me? And yes, I did go through a few 25 newsletters every week, but I couldn't keep up. I didn't have Gen AI then to quickly summarize it as effectively, or probably I was bad at prompting. But the problem was I couldn't do it. And then what I could do is solve it by just building an app for me. And I started building it, and a lot of students started noticing it. And then they were like, can I have this too? And I'm like, you know what? I would just put it up on the Play Store App Store for you to just use it. And that became the What's on Campus. That's essentially the app. It helps students connect, find what's around, and helps universities to know what students are doing so that they can really personalize and channel their budgets in what students really need with evidence and data-driven decisions and not a hunch. Yes.
Many see AI as taking away from the human experience, and Marianne's touched a little bit on that. Replacing us and our sense of belonging for each other. And I think you created it because you were looking for that belonging and trying to find your way. What's your perspective on this? And you touched a little bit on it when you were talking about the app, but how do you think your app has transformed?
It has transformed it. We've helped students from 10 countries, international students from 10 countries find anti-dodgy accommodations. We've gained traction from the City of Sydney, the rental commissioner, on how we are detecting those scams. So that's also a lot of AI coming in to help students know you might be signing up for a dodgy listing. So that's a lot of things. I think I'm allowed, but Gen Zs, and I'm allowed to say it, but I'm a Gen Z. Gen Zs don't really think a lot of times, but they're great at complaining, which is why you know exactly what the problems are. So I think it makes it really easier for startups to roll out these iterations as well. And I think in that specific sense for campus and communities, we have played a major role in terms of helping a lot of students we've done a few surveys and stats on how has it. Yes, it has reduced anxiety in terms of finding. The only stress now that we see in our community, which is now, is housing, which we're not working on yet. So primarily, we've sold what we are actually targeting. So then we're looking at other things.
Great. And belonging and student experience is a major pillar of the new strategy. And thinking about how we roll that into that experience is going to be absolutely critical. I'll now get to questions for anyone on the panel or all of you to talk about. Can you give us examples of how AI has already disrupted higher education in your work? And has this disruption been positive or negative? Maybe start with Alex.
Okay, so yes, I mean, I think it's not even an elephant in the room, is it? It's the sort of the very large 60-ton monster in the room, assessment. So there are forms of assessment that are older than the history of time, I think, in some ways, that people have just said, oh, this is the way I was taught, this is the way I'll assess. It worked for me. I did really good in exams, so it must work. I like this, I didn't like that. And so everybody's brought their life experiences to the way they assess. And we've tried to move things, but at the same time, there are things that are just comfortable and there are things that work at scale. We know what the costings are to do particular types of assessment. We've budgeted for that. Anything else is very sort of difficult to affect change at scale. And I think AI has just exploded that and said, well, you just cannot assume that the way in which you assessed makes sense anymore. And you can't assume that what you are actually assessing is, in fact, the learning of the student. So that's been hugely disruptive, and I think in a really good way, because it makes us go back to first principles and say, what are we actually here for? What is the point of a university degree? And I think the answer has to be, it's about transforming a person's view of the world. It's about giving people skills and understandings to be able to adapt with change throughout their life. So it's not about cramming a certain sort of corpus of knowledge into them, which dates the moment they graduate. It's about those skills, those critical thinking skills. And a lot of the way that we've traditionally taught and a lot of the way that we've traditionally assessed has done that by proxy in a sense. So there's an assumption that if you lecture to somebody, they are sitting there critically thinking about what you're saying, not typing it into a computer and hoping it regurgitates later. And there's an assumption that when you set someone a research essay or you set them an exam, they critically think about what the point of this course is all about, what the key learning outcomes are, and they focus on that in their study, and the mark they get is secondary to the learning. And we all know neither of those are true. So AI is sort of, in lots of ways, a bit of a Trojan horse because it takes all of the things that we've taken for granted in the way we teach and assess and says to us, well, actually, is that true? Is that really true? And is it worth fighting for? Which bits of education are really important that transcend time and transcend technology, and which bits are just sort of yesterday's problem? So I think the core is, how do we develop learners who are aware, can change the world? And that's really where the strategy is absolutely sort of spot on in terms of that. That is really what we're trying to do. And so everything else then becomes secondary to that. And AI can either help or hinder that. And I think one of the really nice ways to think about AI is thinking about it in terms of sort of a crossing lines graph. You've got a graph where there's the knowledge and the skill of the student. And at birth, it starts at 0, and then it gets to a particular point, and probably it falls away when you get to my age. But the idea that you have skills and experience and life experience, that goes up. AI doesn't start at 0. AI, even with really bad prompts, will start at a particular point. You can give it a really simple prompt. It will still give you an answer. And that answer will be better than you'll get in primary school. It's probably better than you'll get in year 8, year 9, year 10. At what point does the student's knowledge and skill get better than the AI-generated answer with a basic prompt? And that's really the thing that we really need to think through, because there should be a point in our degrees where our students are capable of creating much better answers then, they're capable of producing answers with AI which are greater than just asking AI. But there's a point early in the degree where probably for some students, if not all students, a generated response looks better than their own response. And so that's the challenge, that's the real disruption. How do we actually get people to engage with learning to get themselves to a level where they're above an automated answer?
Thanks, Alex. Marianne?
Good luck with that. Have you looked at like chess programs? There's just no human that's ever going to beat the AI. I think that's, but you know, in innovation, there's two ways to win. One is to be better than, right, or be different. I think we should be different. I think we need to just find our niche in this new world where AI can just do so many more tasks better than us. Not just because it's, you know, more intelligent, it's just it can access more data faster. And I think, you know, critical thinking is super important. We need to know, what are these skills? I would really want to put experimentation out there, because even now, what's our how do we find the path, right? We're not going to be finding it through critical thinking, right? We're going to be left behind if we just do critical thinking. We need to experiment to learn quickly, and the faster we do that, the better. I think look at marketing, how marketing's changed. Used to be broadcast like lectures. Marketing is now like super targeted. And as people use generative AI, increasingly it becomes hyper targeted, right? And we've seen that transition and what it means. And I think learning is going to go like that. We're always sort of partway through it, but this technology it's a breakthrough, it's a game changer, and it can give us a surge to go up that trajectory fast, really fast, such that we don't want to fall off and we don't want to get ahead of the wave, because you've got to learn kind of just in time, and that's hard for big universities or any organization. So hyper personalization is very likely to be where we're going. No one should ever predict the future. No one knows that better than me. But if you just follow, you know, the trends, if you follow the money, the investment, that's where we're going. And, you know, how can we prepare for that? And I think on the research side, was it last week or the week before that AI won the Nobel Prize for Chemistry and the Nobel Prize for Physics? We had to put some human names against the prize, because one of the rules for the Nobel Prize is that the winner has to be alive. Well, I mean, 10 years from now, because people are already questioning, like, people who understand this technology believe it understands. LLMs have an understanding. They are not stochastic parrots, just, you know, using statistics. But by the way, what are we doing? How are we doing? What makes us so special? Our brains are tuned to that as well. So I think there's interesting questions there. And I think how we automate routine tasks is going to be really transformational as well in a university. I mean, think of just travel, just the yeah, okay. I rest my case.
We got a lot of feedback about travel when we were doing the conference.
Yeah, but it's a good example that we all understand. And, you know, if you can, you know, there's technology today. I mean, literally in one afternoon, that could be transformed just using the latest Claude. That would be the tool that I would use. Mm-hmm. And in one afternoon, to just sort of build a prototype and test it. Mm-hmm. So that's what is also changing. And also, you don't really need a degree in computer science to do it. Yeah. Anyway, I'll stop there.
Great, thanks. Rushi.
From a student side of things, in terms of learning as well, I think it's really important for inclusivity of students. And I think as someone who's got anxiety, and I'm also autistic and ADHD, I really struggle sometimes. However interesting the lecture is, I just cannot critically think while it's going on, because it's 2 hours long and no one's going to change it for me. And that's how the world is, and I accept it and I'm proud of it. But the point is, I can still ask AI, this seems really overwhelming. Can you summarize it? There's been times, even as a student, where I constantly yap to my phone. I audio record whatever I've just learned from the class. And while on my way to the next class, I've got it on my phone as well. On my way to the next class, I've already used AI to summarize what I learned in my style, because I've trained my agents to talk in a way that I prefer, processing things. So because it's right up fresh, the lecture, I've just made notes in my way. And I think that's unless I can afford a really expensive personal assistant on a student life budget, there's no one who can do that for me right away. Not that fast. My app, for example, my undergrad was in animal behavior and wildlife psychology. And I coded an app, which is doing really good. We're part of the accelerator from a bus from UNSW to Coogee. And that was perfect. And I tested it twice. I uploaded the same screenshots of the app that ChatGPT created and said, how would this seem to a student who is colorblind? How would this look to a student who's got anxiety? And yes, you've got anxiety. What is DM? What does an app have to do with it? But that's assuming it, because AI wouldn't assume it. It would still give me feedback that even though it's not anxiety inducing, it actually could be. And I think that rating really helps. So as a student, to me, that really, really helped. And at the same time, I was constantly at the risk. AI has changed my life quite literally. My brother-in-law leads privacy and ethics at OpenAI. So it's changed dinner conversations, which is very annoying. And my sister leads Google AI. So very annoying. So it's like, why do we have to talk about this on dinner? And they're like, this is not work for you. So I was like, okay. So then the point is, it's more of like, I think being in this conversation as well, where I've learned, is this making me, and you might have heard me quoting this earlier, relevant or redundant? And if it's making me redundant as a student, I'm really scared, because at the end of the day, I'm going to uni to get a good job. And I think that's really emphasized in some of the courses as well, where my foundation course that coming up with there, I think Kelsey's course, she's here as well. Marianne, I'm pretty sure a lot of courses come in where they're just teaching you how to build agents as well, even if it's not a part of the curriculum, even if it's just to read a case study. And I've been in class, I have personally been next to a student when I was in class as well as a student, saying, don't you have any guilt? Because I had OpenAI up on my screen. And I'm like, why don't you just pay attention in the class? Why are you looking into my screen? It's like, no. And there was an exchange student from the United States and just told me, we don't do this in school. Why are you using shortcuts? And I'm like, how is this a shortcut? I'm just making learning. It's smart work. I wouldn't call it just easier work, but I think it's helped a lot of students feel more comfortable. I've had conversations in my classroom. Sometimes I'm not able to frame a question because I'm not a speaker of English as my first language. And when I'm talking, how do I frame this question that allows me to even ask a question in class? And I think that's really important with someone with anxiety, or to make it comfortable for some students who can't be there, because you can't really expect, you have to attend an in-person or online class, have to keep your camera on if someone's got anxiety. And that's where a lot of these AI softwares come in, where even if your eyes, I'm autistic and I can't look in the webcam sometimes because it's really intimidating. There's AI softwares that actually change your eye to you're actually looking. Yes, I don't use it to use my phone while the class, but the point is it helps you. And that's every emerging technology which comes with some risks and some bad impacts and negative impacts, but that's business for you. And I think it's got much more of a great advantage in terms of learning, and inclusive learning more importantly, which I have personally experienced, used, and I'm really proud of it. So
it's been a positive experience for you.
Absolutely, and everyone that I know as well.
But these are the experiments, all right? You're kind of a guinea pig, and we don't really know if that's good or it's bad. I mean, there's research that shows that, if we pit you against you and ChatGPT, probably the team would win. But if we now take ChatGPT away from that team and we put you against yourself, your old self will win. So I think that's sort of a moment to pause. And there's just a lot of research that we need to do. And in order to do it, we need to be able to do experiments quickly, because we want answers to that. Because if it is really helping you, and it's not just the safety piece, is it? Is it really helping you relative to the alternatives? Is this the best thing for you? That's what we want to know. That's what you want to know, because you want to be relevant. So, there's just a lot of questions around that. But I think also a lot of kind of, encouragement and excitement, because, we'd all like that to be true. And I think that is why I'm questioning it with my critical thinking, because it sounds like confirmation bias to me, or could be. We don't know.
And in thinking through in the development of the strategy and the work that all of you are doing, I think we're, from my naive and limited exposure to how UNSW is using it, I think it's more tactical because the strategic questions are still being considered. Would you say that's right?
Yeah, I think that's right. As Marianne's saying, we're experimenting. Everything we're doing is an experiment. The idea that you would sink a huge amount of money into a particular platform is a bit nuts at the moment. We're really trying to understand how the platforms work, where they're evolving, what pace are they evolving at. We need to be able to get on quick and get off quick. And we need to really, of course, the difficulty with universities is universities are intergenerational in the way that they were designed. They were designed to last for 1,000 years. So when you've got technology changing every 5 minutes, the idea that the university structures and processes are going to be agile and cope with that is a bit unrealistic. So we've got a lot of work to do to really think through how do we make ourselves more agile to be able to get on and get off these things. So I think we're doing it quite well in that we've got lots of pockets of experimentation. The really big challenge has always been, once you've done those proof of concepts or those experiments and you know it's a goer, how do you then get it from there to an enterprise level adoption? And how do you make a choice between the various proof of concepts that have all worked, particularly when you've got lots of different use cases across the university? So our big challenge is that sort of scale. How do we? You don't want to pick winners. In a gambling kind of way, you want to actually have a solid basis for making decisions, but you don't want to be overly committed to these things. So it's
and don't underestimate that. That is an organizational transformation. What is a university, and especially UNSW, and especially the business school? We are an engine for innovation, right? We're revising our courses regularly. We're paying attention to what's going on in industry, trying to make sense of it, trying to figure out, what the student needs are. And so we've got these engines that are highly tuned because, nothing's changed that much, but this is to scale. And I think you really nailed it when you said we had to scale it. Okay, because that is what this transformation is meaning, and so and it is going to take time. But the more of these experiments we can do, the better. And also, I think what you haven't really mentioned, Alex, is the promulgation of the information after these experiments. So I know Tam is running a big experiment looking at is ChatGPT better than Copilot, and invited anyone across the whole university to get involved. So
up to 150.
Yeah, she can kill me later. But and this is what I was saying earlier about the culture here at UNSW, that collaborative piece and that confidence that is the right way to go is really our unfair advantage that we can tap into.
Yeah, great.
And I think the other thing that sort of is really critical is holding more than one idea in our mind at once. That's the absolutely sort of critical thing to success here, because we've got to experiment at speed. We've really got to get into things like Marianne says, but at the same time, we've also got to keep a part of our mind away from it, and we've got to look at it from a bigger picture. What's the implication of letting the AI, the autonomous agent, do all of this for us? What does it mean? It's sort of the issues that Rushi's talking about. That really helps in some circumstances, but at the same time, is it really going to help? So being able to do more than one thing at once, particularly difficult when we're all really sort of trying to do so many things already, but AI demands that we cannot just move in a linear fashion.
Yeah. And that's a good, segue into my next question, which is about the ethical implications of AI. While we hear all the good, the bad, and the ugly, one of the major concerns is around, I think of rise of the machines and those sorts of things. And I'm not the kind of person that doesn't even like cruise control on my car. But I use AI. Maybe talk a little bit about the ethical implications and what role UNSW has to play in that conversation. Mary Ann, do you want to start?
Well, you've got to look at UNSW in a bigger context. We're in Australia. We've never developed an LLM. We are not driving these technologies. That's happening elsewhere, mainly in a kind of maybe a 25 kilometre circle around San Francisco. Like there are 10,000 people designing the future for us. And we have really spent a lot of time looking at, the things that can go wrong, looking at the risks. The government is very focused on this because it can't really do it. Sorry, that's not true. There's so much it could be doing. It could be investing in, a new generation of people who really not only understand AI, but understand these risks and are able to ensure that AI aligns with human kind of values and intentions like we were discussing earlier. So the government certainly has options, but it is sort of chosen to focus on identifying the risks, wondering, what kind of laws we're going to need. Meanwhile, this technology is kind of changing literally every 5 minutes, as Alex was saying. We don't know where it's going. It is a sort of a dangerous strategy. I think it's important to know what they are and to investigate and to understand and to experiment and to find out what the real risks are, where are they important, and in particular, learning. I feel like education is now sort of up there in a way that it wasn't previously with these high-risk industries like finance. Things can go wrong in education at scale in ways that we haven't had to deal with before because it can just spread so quickly. And we know that there's issues with basically using AI to manipulate people. People are sort of irrational, but we are predictably irrational. Right, because we have these well-known biases. I can anchor Alec on topics I know he's like super interested in, and our brains are easily hackable, and we can nudge, we can, and that you can think you're doing the right thing, right? So it doesn't have to be malicious, but even for yourself, like you've decided you want to use these technology in a certain way because it helps you because of certain things that you need help with, and that's a choice you're making, and yet you don't really know what the choice set is, and if that is the best choice because you don't have a way to really measure the risk versus the reward, and I think that's the place we want to get to. Where everyone can do that because it's just like Facebook. We're all on Facebook. We're giving all of our private data away. Why? We've created a $1 billion company. I don't know what Facebook's worth now, but more than 100 billion. We've created this. And there's a sort of a value exchange that happens, and we need to find the sweet spot where we understand the risk and we're willing to accept that risk to get the 10x value that is available. We all drive cars, people die on the roads every day in, shocking circumstances, yet we, as a society, we kind of accept it. So where is that line going to be with AI?
Thanks. Rushi, what about you?
I think one really important thing is the outcomes of using AI as well, and that I think what I'm personally passionate about to my degree with sustainability is if we don't teach AI by foundation, then there's a lot of wrong prompting that happens, and then people are stuck in this distrust and I don't like this, just like any piece of tech. Yes, I'm like a grandpa trying to use a phone, but that's exactly what happened. Yeah. No one was against phones or calculators when people were protesting that I'm going to do mental math. Why are you building calculators? That's a full-time job. But then the point is, if this is really going to help me, you really need to ask me to sit down, shut up, and this is helpful. But the more important thing is listening to me why I don't want to. But that's where ethics come in as well, that listening to people, what are their concerns, why they don't want to, and telling them, if you use it this way. There's a lot of courses teaching ethical AI as well, and also teaching things like start your first assignment by creating something by AI, and then your task is to criticize it. If it's by foundation, I actually wouldn't be dependent on it. AI is also leading to one of the scariest things is the blank paper syndrome, which is now students are not able to think, initiate thoughts. A lot of us now, when we start to draft or write a document, ask AI to just create our index, our structure, and as soon as we've got our index and headings, we are able to write 3 paragraphs each inside it without AI. But we're not able to get those headings first, which stops us from thinking, is there any other vertical that I could actually explore more of 3 paragraphs or 30 paragraphs into? We call it the blank paper syndrome, and it's becoming a real thing among students, especially because by foundation, they're not starting to think. So that thought initiation is something we're potentially also harming if we only ask them to learn these tools and not handhold them in learning it in the way it is supposed to be. Yes, it's university, but AI is very new and has to be taught in a way that schools will. And it is that handholding that in an ethical way we need to start, or it's even worse from that's what I talk to my family about. I'm so glad that I graduated before OpenAI became a huge thing because I'm so scared of not being able to think anymore. And that's so scary. Yes, it can plan my trips. Yes, it can tell me what to eat. But when do I exactly think then? And I'm just puppeting around like a zombie, and that's really scary.
But I think this is where AI is a gift, right? Because it's helped us actually uncover bias in human society, right? Because one of the first bias that was sort of documented was with judges who were found to be giving people of dark skin longer sentences for the same crime. So, that's all in the data. AI found this bias, and we can talk about it now. Whereas before you would have to challenge a judge. And on the ethical piece, it's, we're all living in this new AI world, and we're discovering that ethics is important and that there are questions that we need to think about more deeply. And I think so that's something for us to leverage as educators, because it's very real for students, it's relevant, and it's actually really important. And I feel like, that's something that we can use AI for.
Look, I think it comes back to that first question, what is the point of a university? Because Microsoft and Google, they'll be able to do training programs on how to use AI faster and better than we can. They're geared up for that. But universities are that sort of critical, contemplative, broader vision of what a society should be, what's a just society, what's a better society. And AI, when it's largely in the sort of the control at the moment of corporate entities who are insanely competitive with each other, we're not taking the time to sit back and say, well, where is this heading? So that's, I think, the fundamental sort of societal benefit that universities provide. We are the place where whole generations of people can come through and take that time. It's a space in your life as a student that you get very rarely, to actually think deeply about things and to consider what the implications of your actions are. And I think that's really where universities can really add to what our understanding of AI is. So Marianne was saying, human in the loop slows down the AI, and it's the grit in the sort of the process. That may be a good thing in some circumstances if we don't know exactly how that AI agent is working. And there's AI and there's AI. So much more machine learning approaches are probably much more reliable than much more sort of generative approaches. So all of that, I think, is really critical to what we do as a university, so that our focus is we're not here to train students to be sort of highly skilled manipulators of AI alone. We're here to make sure that people understand the implications and the responsible way to use that AI. When is it the right time and when is it not the right time to use it?
It's kind of empowerment. Because, yes, we're a think tank and we're a place to think and sort of engage with other thinkers. But we also shape the future, or have the opportunity to. And these are the skills that our students need. They need to be empowered, because the best way to sort of predict the future is to design it. I mean, that's a really famous quote, and it's one that is, I think, very relevant for our students today, because there are so many tools to shape the now and the future, right? Innovation used to be an art and very focused around commercialization of our IP. Not anymore. And Rushi, embody this whole idea that, innovation today, that is value creation with this extraordinary technology, is, and no longer so much of an art. It is a science. And I think this is kind of just as important as the ability to think, and it's the ability to do and experiment.
Great. Time is going really quickly. In the last few minutes of the hour that we have, happy to open up to audience questions if you've got any. Yeah, and we'll just grab one mic.
Hi, good morning. Thank you so much for this great conversation. I'm Valérie Comgerman, the Deputy Head of School Education in the School of Humanities and Languages, and I'm more interested now in the humanities side of the school. And I would like to ask you how you see the humanities involved in this big transformation that is happening on campus. And what is the future of humanities, please? Basically, I would like to know more to see how you envision this.
Well, I'll argue for humanities all day long. I'm just thinking how controversial I should be. But
Go for it,
Come on,
Alex.
go for it, yeah.
we had humanities before we had science. We also had religion in the middle there, messing around with both. But humanities is, in the name, the secret's in the name, isn't it? It's what makes you human. So it's not that there isn't humanities in science. And I think science is at its strongest when it has those philosophical sort of human ways of approaching research. And similarly, humanities is at its strongest when it accepts that there are research methods out of science that can put a lot of rigour into humanities. So I think that they're so enmeshed, and teaching responsible ways of thinking about AI in designing the future. Designing the future is designing a future for humans, and that's where humanities, the richness of culture, all of the insights of advantage and disadvantage that you get through understanding humanities, I think is absolutely core to the way in which we design AI. So to me, it's totally integral.
Yeah, what we're seeing is really the clash. It's a socio-technical phenomena. It's the clash between, people and technology. And, AI is not going to go very far on its own, but it is helping to uncover all kinds of things. It's showing how the world is just so unfair for lots of people. We have the opportunity to kind of remake the world. And I think without humanities, imagine that world. No one would want to go there. Whereas, if we're smart and able to kind of bring in not just humanities where it's at today, but enriched by this sort of new thinking. So I see that as very central. I once had a really interesting discussion with the Dean of Science. Like, have you spent time with babies? They're not philosophizing. They're interacting with the real world, doing millions of experiments every 5 minutes. So, And the dean was wondering how they could kind of get on board AI and innovation. And I just said to them that, nobody understands experiments better than a scientist. And I remember the response, just like, gulp. So there's lots of really obvious things and things we assume that we're not really exploiting. And I think that the humanities is a great example, because it's sort of evolved to a point for a world that, you could argue doesn't really exist anymore. We're going to a new world. So we've got to redo everything. And I feel like that's very exciting.
Do you want to? Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, you are. Any other questions? Yeah.
I guess we're saying that the learning model for students has changed. We don't need to sort of memorise the IBM Errors and Codes book or the history of the world. So how then do we measure the education? How do we measure that the student has reached the threshold to pass?
Straight to you, Alex.
Yes. So look, I suppose it's becoming a little bit cliche, but I think it's a really nice way to think about it. It's that difference between process and product. So the way in which we've traditionally assessed is we've looked at something a student has produced, whether it's an answer in an exam, whether it's an essay, whether it's a piece of sculpture, and we've just taken that final product and we've taken as an assumption that the student went through the learning process in producing that product. So it's a proxy for learning. So assessment by product has always been proxy-based. If you actually really want to understand how somebody is, whether they've learned something and how they're approaching something, you have a conversation with them. So you engage with them interactively and watch them and be part of their learning process. Now, obviously, at scale, that's very, very difficult to do for everything. But I think that the answer is in how we sort of change the balance, if you like, between assessments that are based around product to assessments that are based around observation or interaction, so that we can actually see that the student is actually applying the knowledge and that's how they learn. So it's a complex, and as Marianne says, lots of experiments. So we've got to keep trying, and the experiments that were successful sort of a year ago may not be successful now because of the amount of change. So it's a constant rethinking of things, but it is really trying to get our heads around being with the student on the learning journey and being able to, if you like, credentialise them as they go through that journey, rather than waiting to the very end and then giving them a mark on the basis of something they've handed in.
I think it's so important to recognise that, you know, what we have been doing is just a proxy, but a useful proxy. I remember being shocked when I was investigating. I had a really big class and I was investigating, you know, multiple choice. And I discovered, well, they're using it in biochemistry with med students. I thought, hey, I've got a license to use it in my, innovation class. And what I discovered is that multiple choice, a well-designed, I know there are terrible ones, but if you have a well-designed one and you also take a quarter of a mark from every wrong answer, because otherwise, you know, a monkey can get 25% just playing the odds, you will get a very similar ranking of students that you would if they'd written long essays or, you know, done other kinds of, you know, more in-depth kinds of assessments. That's really interesting. So this is something that maybe AI can help with as well. Can we find new proxies where, because learning is really a visceral thing, right? It's happening to your brain as well as your mind. It's not a conceptual thing. It's a physical thing. And you know, we're just going to have to come up with new proxies, and we know that they have to be new because a lot of the ones that we have already aren't really working, and we also have to take the scale into account. But again, what's A good at? Scale.
And the other thing that's really interesting about the multiple choice example is that they're proxies for different things. So multiple choice is testing your critical ability to make choices. It's not testing your ability to create. Whereas something that's a blank page where you have to write an answer to, that's actually requiring some level of creation. So we need to unpack these types of questions we've been asking too, to work out what is it we're actually sort of assessing in that activity. And I think as we do that, we'll start to see which ones are really valuable and which ones we can just let go of. We over-assess, we know it, but we find it very difficult to admit it when we're putting courses and guidelines together.
I might wrap that up because the noise outside is disruptive, but we are at the end of time for our panel. Is it the speaker? We are at the end of time. A huge thank you to our panelists for their time and their insights.